you're probably picturing London, you're picturing this beautiful, the free country of England. Well, it's gone. It's gone. Muslim men make up 3% of the British population. They're responsible for 90% of the groups of men that rape kids. The country's being Islamised. The culture's disappearing. We feel like we're under attack.
And we're back for another episode of Standpoint. I'm Gabe Groisman, and we have a really interesting interview today, as you see from the headlines, I'm sure. Tommy Robinson from the UK joins us here in the studio in Miami. Tommy Robinson, Google him, and you're going to say, what are you doing having this guy on your episode or on your podcast? But it turns out that there seems to be a huge delta, a huge difference between how he's labeled and what he's actually doing out there. Many people label him as a far-right extremist who's been jailed. Look what he's been jailed for before you just say someone's been jailed. The situation in the UK is extremely complicated. There's a big attack on free speech there. People are being jailed for what they say. People are being jailed for not just providing their passwords to their phones. But you can't speak out against the administration. You can't speak out against what's happening around the country. It's real and it's happening. And what Tommy Robinson is doing in large part is shining a light on the Islamization of Europe and of the United Kingdom. And it's not a pretty topic to talk about. People don't like talking about it, particularly in Europe, but also here. No one wants to be labeled anything. And Tommy speaks about that in our interview. No one wants to be labeled a racist for sure or anti-anything bigot. I certainly am not, and try to be nuanced on what's happening, but it doesn't mean that you can't talk about issues as they're occurring. It's a very interesting interview. We had time to talk about just certain things. First of all, an understanding of what's happening in the UK on the online speech laws, or just the hate speech laws, as they call them there, the Islamization. We actually didn't get into the gang rapes too much, but there's a big pandemic of gang rapes happening around Europe and the UK. The controversies around Tommy Robinson, we speak about how he was banned from social media, why he was banned from social media. Now he's come back, but he's demonetized on most platforms. Why? Then we also speak about Israel and his connection with the Jewish community. And I met Tommy Robinson in Jerusalem. He was there on a trip. We speak about the trip that he was on, what he was there doing, and who he spoke to. Kind of then just tie it all together about what's the point of what he's trying to achieve with the work that he's doing, putting his life in danger really every day by trying to expose what's happening, and in his words, trying to save his country, the United Kingdom, but also lots of messages for the rest of the West. Actually, a very similar discussion that we had many months ago with Douglas Murray. Style is very different. Their approach is very different, but their message is very, very similar. So I encourage everyone to listen, whether you agree or don't agree with everything that's said. It's still an important conversation to have. So I welcome all feedback, and hope you enjoy the interview. Tommy Robinson, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, happy to have you here. We met actually in Jerusalem a couple months ago, which is an interesting place to meet. First, I guess we'll get back to the Israel stuff in a second, but it was really exciting to see you there, mostly because Amichai Chikli, who invited you there, someone I know, he was on the podcast twice. We actually lost his episode the first time. It wasn't our fault. It was at a studio. But from my perspective, I like it when they engage with other people and they bring people in. It's easy to talk about somebody, but bring somebody in and
See yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So let's start somewhere else. We'll get back to Israel. Something you mentioned to me before we started the show is you asked, what do people here in America think about what's happening in the UK? And from my perspective, people don't really follow it. So why don't we just start there? What is happening today in the UK? I'll frame it a little bit more for you on free speech, on Islamization, on the left with Keir Starmer, and tell us a little bit about the situation in the UK.
So as an American, you're probably picturing London, you're picturing this beautiful, the free country of England. Well, it's gone. It's gone. White English represent 33% of London. So, and that's the same with most major cities now. The country's being Islamized, the culture's disappearing. We feel like we're under attack. And the biggest problem from a lot of this mass immigration has come in. Look, I'm from a town called Luton Town that's 30 miles north of London. When I was born in 1982, there was one mosque, there's now 45. What have I seen in that change? And Luton's one of the most diverse towns in Europe. It has everyone, Sikhs, Hindus, there's no Jews, they've all left. The main terraced mosque was the old synagogue. So there's no Jews left. There's no Jews left, but we have been, like my mum was an immigrant. Most of my friends are St. Lucian, Jamaican, Bulgarian, Italian, or sons of immigrants. So I've managed to see what works and what doesn't work. So lots of people who are growing up in areas now are getting angry with immigration. They're blaming a lot of the migration that's come in that works. They've come here, they've assimilated, they've integrated, they love the nation. Luton was always divided by religious lines. We had the Muslim playground and the non-Muslim playground. That's what we saw at school. And I saw hostility, violence, aggression in a level that I've never seen, and I never understood it. I couldn't get my head around it. I just thought it was the Pakistani community, because 50% of Luton's Pakistani. So I thought, they're very different, they're aggressive. It was only years later when I got my head into the Quran, and I challenge anyone to do this, I always say it. Pick up the Quran, open the book, and start writing. Every time you see a reference in there that talks about not being friends with Christians or Jews, or speaks derogatory about Christians or Jews, just write the verse number. And within 20 minutes, you'll have pages of verse numbers. So that then was like a jigsaw fell into place for me. Everything I'd seen, the segregation, the non-assimilation. But the real problem for our country, and this is why America needs to wake up, because Joe Biden's imported into your country. You've had lots of immigration coming from Hispanic nations. You've now had your borders open to Pakistan, Somalia, Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq. None of it was done by mistake. It's all been orchestrated. They've been flooding your nation. And you need to look at what's happened to Britain. So, and this isn't say every Muslim is bad. So anyone listening to this, some of the best people I've met growing up, some of the people I love are Muslim people, yeah? But Islam and the power of it and what it does to a town, Winston Churchill said, Islam has the power to take Europe back to the Dark Ages. Sir William Gladstone said, there'll never be peace on this earth so long as we have this book. It's a violent and cursed book. Now, people don't like hearing that, but we have to have this discussion when we look at what's happened to Great Britain. Muslim men make up 3% of the British population. They're responsible for 90% of the groups of men that rape kids. 90% from 3%. 30% of the men who have committed these rapes are called Muhammad. And why is this? Why aren't the Sikhs doing it? Why aren't the Hindus doing it? Why aren't the Jews doing it? Why is this one community come into our country? And it's not just our country. I think the rapes last year in Sweden, 63% of the rapes were Muslim migrants. They make up 10% of that population. 77% of the rapes in Paris last year, Muslim migrants. 54%. If you look at Germany, and this is why America, you need to get ready. You have no idea what you've done, yeah? Get ready, because from 2000, when Angela Merkel opened up the doors to Syria, she let in 1 million into Germany. Now, from 2017 to 2022, rapes went up 45%. 54% of the convictions for rape, again from a 10% population, 54% were Muslim migrants. 11% of the rapes last year were Syrian nationals. Joe Biden opened up your borders and brought in 10 million. So these same problems, they're here. They're in the United States. They're in the United States. You need to get ahead of the game. You need to deal with it because they've imported them. Even when you look at, I think you've had a warning with the Somali situation with the frauds. You've had that warning. But why do you think Somalia is one of the highest nations in the world? Why do you think they ended up in Minnesota? Why do you think they come into America and just chose to go to the coldest place in the United States? They've been put there. And this is the importation, which was now, it sounds like a conspiracy. It's not anymore. We know it. Spain's doing it now. Many of these left-wing organisations were flooding the nation. Your swing states, the immigration rate went up upwards of 700% in each of your swing states. They didn't want there to be another swing state. They were flooding your country with illegals to vote, because they become reliant on the state, and they're happy for people to be reliant on the state.
So let me dig a little bit deeper when you're talking about Muslims in the UK. How do you differentiate between Islam and radical Islam, Islamization?
So I'd say Muslims are people. So if you hate Muslims, that's really bad, because they're individual people. Each one of them is very different. So some of them are great, some of them are bad, same as every other community. But Islam is Islam. And it's our God-given right to look at Islam and understand the teachings of Islam. And if, when you open up the book, the Quran, if there's 100 verses that incite rape, murder or war against non-Muslims, then when we look at these rape statistics that I talk about, in the Quran, there's 4 verses that clearly state non-Muslim men can take non-Muslim women as sexual slaves. In one of the verses actually says they're blameless. Now, most people don't understand this. Most people think, oh, Islam, Christianity, oh, Muhammad's probably like Jesus. No, Muhammad cut off 600 heads in one day. Muhammad's whole Jewish tribe surrendered, held their hands up, and he beheaded all the men. And then that night, this isn't Tommy Robinson's opinion. This is from the biography of Muhammad by Ibn Ishaq, the most renowned biographer of Muhammad's life in the world. He says that he beheaded the whole tribe and then took Sophia that night, the leader of the tribe's wife, that night, and raped her. Well, they say married her, but as if she's willingly married the man after he beheaded her husband and all her family. So we have to understand the difference in what Islam is compared to other religions. Islam's an ideology. It's a full way of life. Political ideology, it has law, it has all the rules. It's very different, and it doesn't allow for assimilation. There's not one success story. And if you're in the United States, you need to look. You need to look to the UK, you need to look to Germany, you need to look to France. It's failed. It's like mixing oil and water. It doesn't work. It's not going to work. We're now seeing the way that the elections are running. We've just seen an election yesterday in the UK where, and this is where you're going to lose. The election in the UK yesterday, 44,000 people didn't vote. The Green Party, which is now the Islamist party, they've all supported that group. And Labour flooded the country with Muslim migration. They turned a blind eye and allowed the rape of a generation of Britain's daughters. Now, this again may sound far-fetched. You need to get your head into this, what's happened. The entire fear is paralysing, and the fear of being branded racist allowed, along with a conspiracy of politicians, police leaders, religious leaders, they allowed the rape of a generation of our daughters. They allowed it. And the numbers, again, any chance I get with an American audience or any other audience, you need to understand the scale of the problem. In the town of Telford has a 1.7% population. I have made a 5-part series called The Rape of Britain. You can watch these films at trfilms.co.uk, where I went as a journalist and I spent 12 to 18 months in the town, and I got to know 12 to 18 survivors, yeah? And I sat down with the survivors and said, tell me your story. I interviewed them for 3 hours, 4 hours, 3 times, 4 times. And I built a database of the men because I knew there's only a 1.7% population here. Now, the police investigation identified 1,000 victims. In this small town, 5 are dead. Burned some of the children alive, yeah? But 5 are dead in this town. The police investigation identified 200 perpetrators. So 200 Muslim men in that town. That's the police's numbers. So that's the lowest number we have. In that town, there's only 4,000 Muslims. Get rid of the women, get rid of the kids. There's 1,000 men. So out of 1,000 men, the police identified 20%. My investigation identified 26%. We got 260 names. And in our documentary series, when the men are named by 3 or more girls that don't know each other, we go after them. We go into their businesses and we go and question them about trafficking children. But this problem wasn't immune to one town. It's in every single town and city. So obviously, if you go Google my name or you look me up, there's a absolute campaign from the minute I opened my mouth about these issues to discredit me, to slander me, to make me that toxic that no one wants to listen to me. Why would they do that? Because in every town and city, they had dirty hands. They allowed this. Now, whilst you're importing mass immigration of Islamic nations into the country, you've got to hide the crimes they're committing. Or if the public are aware of all these rapes, this absolute hatred that's been brought into our nation, they'll start looking up at the government because this is all to do with their policy failure. So they've done it. These people have been imported. They haven't miraculously turned up. They've actually got them into our nation, opened our borders. And it's not a mistake that Americans' borders, Canada's borders, France's borders, Germany's borders, Europe's borders were all open at the same time as they flood our nations. And this is what's happening. What we have now currently happening in London is the good migrants, the really good communities who've come, like the Jewish community, who are the highest taxpayers, who are well integrated and assimilated, they're having to flee. I'm here now, last week, the police contacted me. You can listen to the recording. Contacted me and said, in this month's ISIS magazine, ISIS make a terrorist publication every month, there's a picture of me to be killed at all costs. So when they tell me this, and this is where America, keep your guns, right? You're the only place in the planet that has free speech. The only place. I don't know if you understand the value that means, because we don't have it. 12,000 people last year in Britain were arrested for things they said on social media. Only 800 in Russia. Yeah? But keep your guns, because when they come and give me this Osman warning, it's an official warning to say there's an intelligence that people want to kill you. They told me, we can't protect you. You need to leave. And the other thing, you can't get a weapon to protect yourself. If you do, you'll be prosecuted. Now, I'm from Luton Town, which was named by the CIA as the epicenter of terrorist activities in Europe. So my life's in danger. I've got no way of defending myself or my family because we're disarmed. Yeah? We're disarmed. The terrorists are armed. Do you know 4 times as many British Muslims went to fight for ISIS in a 3-year period than have ever joined the British military? There's a problem. It's 40,000 British Muslims on the terror watch list. 40,000.
Let me ask you a question, Tommy. Sorry to interject. So there's something that I keep thinking about, which is, the England is not, the UK is not like the US, like you mentioned, as far as free speech. People are getting arrested for saying things that they think that they deem to be inflammatory, that they deem to be may cause problem. I mean, they use these ambiguous. I was looking it up today. Just really ambiguous standards. They're mostly being used against folks on the right that are saying
they use the word
things.
hate.
Yeah, they use the word hate, which people here, by the way, I do anti-Semitism training for law enforcement. I would speak about it. People have a real misunderstanding on it, especially on the right, where they say, we're telling people not to say it. We're like, no, you could say whatever you want in the US. You could be anti-Semitic as much as you want. We're just telling people what it is. We're teaching people so you can understand the words that are coming out of their mouths. But, you can look at the Jewish Bible, go back to Jewish texts and find things that today, if they would happen today under today's standards, they would be objectionable to be nice, right? As far as stories like the ones you mentioned, but you can't find today a rabbi that's giving a sermon to any synagogue and anywhere on planet Earth saying you should be doing those things today, right? In Islam, you do, right? And you hear imam saying that. So my question is, um, have there been any instances, or has there been any push in the UK to use those anti-free speech laws, right, that they have there, where they're arresting people for things they're saying, to jail, or to at least try to enforce those laws against the imams and the Muslim leaders who are pushing radical Islamic ideology?
No, because the Quran would be banned. All teachings from the Quran would be banned. They're literally allowed to incite murder. You just saw, man, what's his name? The new mayor of Mandani stand up and give a speech in a mosque, and then the translation of the person who spoke after him was calling them to murder all infidels. Now that's happening in mosques across the UK, but these hate laws, they're not brought in to stop hate. They're brought in to stop the indigenous population from criticising or trying to stop or highlight and make people aware of what's happening in the country. And people need to be aware. That's why I'm blessed I'm in the United States, but I'd bring a warning to America. I'm not talking about what I've read here. I've lived it. It's not a book I've read. It's not like trying to understand what might happen. I'm telling you what's happening because I've been born in Luton. I've seen what's happened. I've grown up with them. I know the hate. And I try to explain it to as many right-wing commentators in America. It's incredibly frustrating for me as I watch it. And Tucker Carlson, I just went on a real mad one on the Dave Rubin show, because I said Tucker Carlson flies into my country. He sits in my country and he does an interview with Piers Morgan, and he tries to rubbish the threat level in our nation. And he says, the Pakistani taxi driver I had was a lovely man. I don't see a problem here. You don't see a problem, Tucker. Do you know what they were doing? Because this is never about sexual gratification either. My cousin was a victim of those gangs when she was 14 years old. She was kidnapped and taken, woke up in a room, getting raped by loads of Muslim men with big beards. Yeah, police done nothing. And that's happened from one end of our country to the other end of our country. Some young girls, a little girl who was 11 years old, they heated up an iron rod with the letter M and they scolded on her bum because she was Prophet Muhammad. Other girls they took and nailed their tongues to tables. Now, the level of horrific abuse and torture was about destroying our daughters. And when you look at what's happening, Boko Haram done it. Do you know Boko Haram, when they kidnapped the Nigerian girls? Do you know the leader of Boko Haram? He came out quite clearly and said, Muhammad has commanded us to do this. The Yazidi girls got kidnapped, yeah? And ISIS told you why they done it, because we're allowed to do it. Do you know even the West, as the West, we try and hide all of these things. We try and hide them. So when I looked at the Quran, and I wrote my own Quran, but I didn't do it through my knowledge. I took Islamic scholars and I put it, the Quran is not in chronological order. So if you pick up the Quran, and it used to be, when Gladstone and Churchill were reading it, was in chronological order. Now, why is that important? Because abrogation in Islam means that whatever Muhammad says later in his life supersedes what he says earlier if there's a contradiction. Yeah. So people talk about peaceful verses in the Quran. Yeah, they're in the first 10 years of Muhammad's life, before he found jihad. Once he found jihad, robbery, piracy, slavery, torture, rape, before he found all these things, which he participated in every one of them, yeah, before he found all them, he was quite peaceful, but he only had 350 followers. So when I started putting that book together, I started researching Islam is the religion of peace. And I ask any of you to do this. You will not find it in history until George W. Bush. Once a lie is told 1,000,000 times or 1,000 times by the media and by people, it's then taken as a matter of fact. So we hear all the time now, Islam's religion of peace. Never has been. And do you know, when you start looking at previous prime ministers and leaders of America, of military, clergy, same in Britain, all of them told the truth about Islam. From Gladstone, Churchill, military leaders, because a leader's job of a nation is to make sure his public are educated and warned in danger. Right now, we're not educating or warning in danger, we're hiding the danger. Boko Haram, what do you think Boko Haram means? Do you know? Well, we say it's against West. We say Boko Haram, which translates as against Western education. That's not even their name. I was so shocked. When I looked into the terrorist organisation, that's the name we gave them in the West. Their name is enforcing the teachings of Muhammad. But we tried to hide where all these problems are coming from. So obviously I've been down this rabbit hole. The reason I went down this rabbit hole early on in my life was because al-Mujahideen, who Omar Bakri, Abu Hamza, some of the world's most famous terrorists, their head office was in my town. It was in Biscuit Road. So 60% of British Muslims that are in jail for terrorism are ex-members of this group, which was based in my town. Kids I went to school with went to fight for ISIS. I know them. We're not talking about, it's not anymore America, or it's not what you took in the Middle East. This battle's not in the Middle East. It's in Europe. It's here. It's in America. It's here. The enemy's here. They're within. And they hate us. That, again, that's not all of them, but they hate fundamental literal interpretations of Islam is promoting hatred, promoting intolerance, and it's a massive, massive problem.
So you're here in the US, and in the US, you seem to be welcomed in a different way. I mean, not by the media. If you Google your name today, today's Friday, this episode will come out on Sunday likely. But, everyone's up in arms because someone from the State Department took a selfie with you and said they were happy to see you. So Reuters and all of their friends were upset about it. But more than that, American social media companies have either banned, demonetized you, deprioritized. By the way, they keep changing the terms of the things that they do to creators, but they've definitely made it so you can't make a living through social media, and that less people could see you. Whether they used to call it deplatforming, but now they're changing it. Why do you think that's happened, and how do you think that can change?
So in 2017, I made a documentary called Panorama. You watch it; it's unbelievable. Okay, so Panorama is the BBC flagship investigative documentary maker. They're the ones that have just defrauded and set up and the Donald Trump. He's suing the BBC.
Yeah,
it's to do with this Panorama. Now, Panorama. When I come out of jail in 2017, I got 13 months in prison for reporting on the rape gang, and I spent 12 weeks on solitary confinement, and then it was proven everything they'd done was unlawful, so they had to let me out. Now,
you spent time. Am I right? Because you didn't want to give the code to your phone, or was that a different?
No, that's a different one. That's a recent one. I got found not guilty. They charged me under the Terrorism Act
Right.
for that. But this one was I went to work, so I went up to a court case. There was 30 Muslim men on trial for raping 100 English kids, and they try and hide all this. They try and hide these court cases. They put reporting restrictions on. They hide everything from the public. So I went outside, stood outside court and said, this is how many men are on trial. This is the crimes they've committed. This is how they operate. And I wanted a warning to mums and dads around the country. This is what's happening in our country. The judge summons me from outside reporting, brought me inside. Within 2 hours, I was spending 13 months in jail. But people were outraged when they watched the video of what I'd done because I didn't do anything wrong. So the video had 5 million views by the end of the day. I'm sat in a prison cell. I was on solitary confinement for 12 weeks. Now, in those 12 weeks, a mass campaign was launched to free Tommy Robinson. Yeah. Now, this worried the government. 660,000 people signed a petition. When I come out of jail, I saw a government-funded research on social media asking questions about what people thought of me. So they were concerned because if there was one person that could galvanise and bring men out together and unite them, it was me. Under my group, the English Defence League, which was a group we formed across the UK, we went out on the streets in our thousands. Yeah. I left that in 2015, street activism, and become a citizen journalist. But I come out of jail and I got told that Panorama were working on a documentary, work entitled Tommy Takedown. And they're approaching everyone I'd ever fell out with. So they're approaching people from school. They're approaching ex-employees I'd sacked. So I decided to send someone undercover into Panorama. And I sent a girl in, and her button was a camera. And I got her with the executive and the main man, the main face of this show. And I got her out with him, and I caught covert recordings of them telling people what to say about me on the show. If you say this, and you say this, and you say this, we have a deal. This will go on the film. Then creating sexual allegations, their words, we're going to make this into a sexual thing about Tommy Robinson. Now, if they were successful, I would have been destroyed. I'd be gone. My family would have been destroyed, everything. They were making me into a Harvey Weinstein. Yeah, their words. They offered £5,000. So to another girl. So I got covert recordings of all of this. So when Panorama come to interview me for their documentary and their hit piece that they're doing on me, I set a screen up behind me.
You played it?
And I played it. And I said, would you ever tell anyone what to say in a documentary? Is that journalism? And they said no. And I said, press play. And then they're all looking at the wall, and then the screen come up and it was him telling someone what to say. So it doesn't look good for you, does it, lads? And then all their producers are sat there, and you can see with this on the documentary, they all just put their heads in their hands. And then I went through each thing that they done. I said, would you ever do this? No? Press play. What about this? Press play. Make sexual allegations? Press play. I said, you're frauds. You're absolute frauds. Now, what I proved in that documentary is what Donald Trump said about fake news. But I got them banged to rights. So I released a documentary. Their documentary never come out. They had to shelve it. Yeah. Once I showed what they were doing, they had to shelve it. But when I released the documentary, it had 2 million views in 48 hours. And then I was removed from Facebook, YouTube, every social media overnight. Yeah. I wasn't just removed. On Facebook, this is still the position now. Facebook have me as a hate figure. Yeah. I've never been arrested on any hate crime or race crime. I've never been tried on anything, not even questioned on it. Facts are not hate. I spit facts. That's it. But because of this, they removed me from absolutely everything, and they made me a figure of hate. Now, by making me a figure of hate overnight, that meant that people couldn't say my name. If you say my name, they remove the post. If you put my picture up, they remove the post. And they went back historically. So anyone who spoke positively of me, they went back years and deleted our entire movement from Facebook. Now, this was at a point that they had control. They lost the election with Donald Trump and they realised, how do we get back control? Censorship, censor the Republican voices, take back control. And that's what they did, deplatform. And I was removed from everything. I was invisible for years. I was still I'd done the most important work in my life of my activism when I was censored. And it was so disheartening to tell the stories of these rape victims and look at the views and think, this ain't having the effect. It was absolutely gut-wrenching. But then 2024 comes and Elon Musk turns me back on. So he turned me back on. October 7th had happened, which, look, I keep saying it, so many things had to happen. And I'm not saying this I don't mean that in a bad way, but to get that, Joe Biden had to be elected, not elected. That the election had to be stolen because America needed to see. They need to see with their own eyes the fraud. They needed to see that he's a puppet. They needed to be in that position to understand what it's like under Democrat rule, to see them attack free speech, to see January 6th. They needed to see it. At a time in the UK, they locked me up for 18 months for making a film. That had to happen. Lucy Connolly was a mother. She got 31 months in jail for a tweet. That had to happen. All these things had to happen. Now, when October 7th happened, the hatred that had been hidden was there for the world to see. In every Western capital, in every university, everywhere, just the pride that they had about it. Like, they weren't hiding it. They're walking, chanting about gas and Jews, walking through our capital city. They took over our capital city every week for a year. And people watched it, and I watched it, and I was abroad. I get my page back, I get my voice back. And it was like every time I go down, something picks me up. Every time. And that was Elon Musk picking us back up. Give us back free speech. I travelled back to the UK, organised a rally, and started a mass movement, which we call the United Kingdom movement. But each time, the attack on free speech and the coordination that they had, so they've lost control of that. They've lost the monopoly now due to Elon Musk purchasing X. As I said, I'm still can't monetize. Do you know, you elected Donald Trump, and Americans, you think you voted for Donald Trump to save America. It's to save Western civilization. This is far bigger than the United States. If you lose your freedom, if you don't have fair elections, no one in the world does. Okay, there's a ripple that comes out of the United States, and that ripple is spreading now to the UK, but it's a positive ripple because since you elected Donald Trump, 2 weeks before I got out of jail this most recent time for the documentary, 2 weeks before I get released, my YouTube channel's turned back on, and it was gone. It's like, wow. So, new president in power, free speech is back. Not really free speech, but we've got a chance, we've got a voice, and hope is contagious, and we have hope now. We have hope to regain and fight for our country and our culture and our identity that we didn't have 2 years ago. And we have that because Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio are warning the European Union. The European Union is a totalitarian state. They don't believe in freedom. They don't believe in free speech.
And the judiciary there. I've had lots of dealings with the EU courts for different reasons, and it's a joke. What's happening there? It's a sad joke because the impact is felt all over the world. People don't even realize it. So just to jump to the next topic, we met in Israel. We talked about it in the beginning. I think people were surprised. People that don't know you, obviously, were surprised to see you there. I think there's always an assumption someone's on the right or, is pushing against the immigrants and things like that, that they're probably not good with the Jews either or with Israel. I think there's almost an assumption that people have in their head, many times a false assumption, but there's false assumptions everywhere. Many people were excited you were there, and everybody was happy. If those that didn't know were surprised by how warm you were with the people of Israel. It was so clear. The videos of you walking through the markets, having discussions with people. Also, I was proud as a Jew to see how you were welcomed by the people of Israel from my perspective.
I was so much love.
Yeah, but tell me a little bit about you. It was your first time in Israel when we met?
No, it wasn't. So people talk like, oh, he's being captured by Israel. And this accusation of funded by Israel or Zionist money is very clever because what it does is it makes people too scared to speak up about what's true. So they have everyone thinking, I don't want that accusation. And it's a powerful accusation because what it does is it gives the Muslims a way out for most things because they just blame everything on Mossad. Everything. Jihadi attack, screaming Allah Akbar, quoting the Quran, Mossad.
Right.
It's like, it's raining, it's Mossad. Everything's Mossad. Yeah. But then when they throw it at me, I think, if you follow my history, From the minute I started my organisation, from the minute I started, I spoke for Israel. The reason why is I looked at Gert Wilders and I listened to Gert Wilders, and then I travelled to Israel. But I looked at Gert Wilders and I grew up in Luton. So when I was growing up, I'll give you an example. There's a Jewish community, one of the Orthodox religious communities, and they live out in a convent out on the outskirts of Luton. I was a tearaway as a young kid, and so were my friends. We'd go out and get chases, from anyone we could, just running around causing a little bit of trouble as kids. Luton's a rough town. It's voted the roughest town in Britain. But it's a real town, so you experience real life, So we're out and getting chased. I remember we were down there, out in the countryside, and on the outskirts of Luton, and my friend was cheering. My mum would be so proud as he's throwing things at this convent, and I'm thinking, your mum would be proud. My mum would kill me if she knew I was running around doing this. I said, why would your mum be proud? Jews. He's Muslim. Jews. So I learnt very early on. There was a Jewish family remembering the Holocaust outside Luton Town Hall. And I can still envisage it because they had a little 5-6-year-old girl with it. And as they were remembering the Holocaust, hordes of Muslims come, which was Al Mujahideen, this same group. And the family had to barricade themselves inside the town hall. And I'd watch this same group. So as I'm watching this group, Al Mujahideen, which is the group that we formed to combat, which later on the government went to prescribe as a terrorist organisation, we were right in what we were saying. I watched them coming out of Berry Park and they're doing a pro-Gaza rally. And I'm interested in Islam because it's destroying my town. Kayuba. And I'm thinking, what are they chanting? And the entire community is led at the front by the radical jihadists, the group, There's thousands of them. And they're marching for Gaza, And then that's when I looked at Kayuba. They were marching and chanting about the massacre of Jews by Muhammad. So I'd witnessed all of these things growing up. I'd heard the Jew hatred in the Muslims at school. They hated them, So I'd seen all these things. And then I put it on a parallel with, I live in Luton. We're surrounded by a hostile, aggressive community. So I travelled to find out. I don't like to be ignorant on issues. The Quran, I dug my head into it. I understood it. I read The Life of Muhammad by Ibn Ishaq. I know the book inside out. I know it. I put it into, when I talked about abrogation in the Quran, our Quran will become a best-selling book. But it's not my opinion. It's got footnotes for where all the stuff's come. It's come from Islamic scholars. And the reason it's important, you open the book and any peaceful verse just has a little line for it. And then we have the verse that supersedes it. Just so you can understand it. And what we've done is we put all the bold verses, anything that's about rape, murder or war, we put in bold. So when you open the book, it's just the bold writing. It's like, bloody hell. It takes you 2 minutes to understand what the book is. It takes you 2 minutes. So I'm watching all of this. I'm seeing all this hatred. And then I think, so I talk about Islam because I know about Islam. So when I sit and talk to most people, I think, well, you're defending something you know nothing about and you're calling me ignorant? You have no knowledge of the history of Islam or Muhammad. You have no knowledge of 1400 years of jihad. You've got no, like people talk about Zionism and Israel. I think, you think this war started in 1948? Are you crazy? 45 countries have turned to civil conflict. We've lost all of them. Look at the percentages of Christians, and to the Christians in America who are speaking up, whether it be for Iran, whether it be for Palestine or any of these groups. Look at the Christian population in Syria. It went from 23% to what, 1%? Look at Iraq. It went from 26% to 0.2%. Look at the figures of the Christians. Do you know the only place the Christian populations rose? It's in Israel. So I just find it all insane. But I went to Israel and I wanted to go because I thought I need to know. If I'm going to talk about this, I need to know. So I travelled to Israel and I paid young Muslims and I risked my life. At that time, I was one of the most vocal voices against Islam. I was leading the biggest street protest movement in Europe against Islam. I'd had Osman warnings from Al-Shabaab, death threats, terror threats. 6 Muslims were sentenced to 30 years in prison. They got caught with guns and bombs on the way to kill me. But I travelled and I found a Fatah-controlled refugee camp in Bethlehem. So I paid these, and I went with my friend from school, Dean, who's a Jamaican kid, I went with him. He likes history, so I said, let's go Israel. Let's go and ask some questions. And I went there and I said, right, I met these young Muslims. I said, I want to spend a day in that refugee camp. I'll pay you. Can you get me in? I just want to look around, ask some questions. They had no idea who I was. So they said, yeah, sound. So I said to my mate, we're going to this refugee camp. It's a terrorist-controlled refugee camp. And he's like, what are you talking about? Why would I do that? I said, well, Dean, I'm doing it. You've come with me, man. But I need to ask questions. And we went there and I got video footage of all this. And as I go there, I'm walking around these Muslims and he's a 4th generation refugee. And he says, my children will be 5th. Theirs will be 6th. Two or three times as much money has been given to the Palestinian people than was given to Germany after the World War to rebuild it. We should all be living in mansions. I said, who's oppressing you? And I kept asking, who's oppressing you? Thinking he'd say Israel. The Palestinian Authority So I'm like, who are the Palestinian Authority? That's who governs us. And then he explained, as we're walking around, he got pictures of all these on the murals on the sides of the houses. She's a martyr, so she suicide bombed a bus, yeah. And all of these are people who lived in this camp, this one camp, and on the sides of the houses, that's the house they lived in, yeah. And then he explained that they pay them forever. So if you go and kill an Israeli, then you get paid by the Palestinian Authority. So say like the average wage is £800 a month in Palestine. I don't know how many people know this is happening. Pay for slay, what's now called. But no one knows this is going on. So £800 a month. Well, the Palestinian Authority will pay you £4,000 a month, every month for the rest of your life, if you go and kill an Israeli. So when he said kill an Israeli, I said, so hold on, let me get this, let me understand this. Someone leaves this camp. Now, we hear poverty is the cause of extremism. I've got kids at this point. My mate Dean's got kids. I said, the only way out of here, if you're living here, is to go kill an Israeli. And then your family are out of here. For every generation have escaped this position that they're stuck in. So, and it benefits, it works, because as I'm walking around, by the end I got to that camp, I was playing football with the kids, and when I got to the camp, I thought, I want to help them kids. I said, I'm totally against Hamas and the Palestinian cause. I know it's all nonsense. I said, it's even, so if they bring Western politicians around here, which is what they do, they bring the NGOs, they bring them all, they show them this situation, there's no park, there's no money, there's no nothing. But he kept talking about Palestinian Authority. So I said, if you go kill a Jew, so all you have to do to get out of here, you just go kill a Jew. And he corrected me. He said, kill an Israeli. So what do you mean? It doesn't matter if they're Jewish or not. And I went, what? I said, hold on a minute. And so everything I thought I knew, I'm finding out something different. Yeah. And I know, and I'm fine. And then so I was asking questions. So when I get into that, so when we get back to the safe zone, yeah. So this is, you know, when you go there, you have signs, don't go here. So I just, when I went there, that's where I want to go. Yeah, I want to go there. Yeah, I want to see what's going on there. So we've gone there. We got back to the safe zone. And I put a camera on the gentleman like this. And I set cameras up. I said, can I tell you who I am? And he's like, what? I said, let me introduce myself. Have you heard of the English Defence League? And he went, yeah. I said, my name's Tom Robinson. I'm the founder and leader of the English Defence League. And he sat back, and do you know what? I spent 8-9 days here. I related with him. I'd say I related with him more than anyone I met, the Muslim lad, because he was sort of the same background as me in the sense of the way he spoke. I'd say I'm from a working class, poor background. Out of everyone I met that in that trip, I related with the lad a lot. But by the end of the day, he liked me. We spent a day together. Yeah, he got to know me. We liked each other. We had a laugh. And then he sat there and he just said, "Why would you do this?" And I said, "Because I had to hear your point of view, bro. I couldn't come here and just listen to Jews tell me about Israel. I had to listen to Muslims tell me about Israel." I said, "And you haven't mentioned Israel. You're pissed off with the Palestinian Authority. You told me they're oppressing you. You told me not to give money to pro-Palestine." And not just from that, we're walking then, and you've got camel races going on. You've got men with machine guns, and there's about 1,000 young Arabs. I've got an I Love Israel t-shirt on. So I said, stop the car. And we stop the car, and I walk into the crowd thinking like someone's going to say something. No one batted an eyelid. There's a Jewish family having a picnic with skull caps on. And do you know what? I thought, you couldn't do that in London. If you had 1,000 young Arab Muslims, Pakistanis, you couldn't sit there with your skull cap on in London. So I realised Israel's got it working better than we have. And I also didn't realise there's 2 million Muslims that live in Israel, in the state of Israel. So then I started speaking to them. And I went out, and I've done it this time as well. So this was, the first time I went was when was the first time I went? 2014? It's 10 years ago. 12 years ago. The first time I went, and I didn't have the profile I've got now, but I went asking questions. And I remember I was on Golan Heights. Bombs were going off in Syria at the time. It was a Syrian conflict. And I asked this Muslim lad, I said, "Mate, what's it like living in Israel?" He goes, "It's great." I went, "What do you mean it's great?" He goes, "It's great." And he started laughing. And I said, "Well, as a Muslim, you're living in the state of Israel, are you treated differently?" He said, "I pray 5 times a day, bro." Yeah. He said, "Do you think I want to live over there?" And he pointed to Syria where the bombs were going off. Yeah. Which again, so I knew this. Yeah. And it doesn't mean it's perfect. And again, and what I don't understand is, I went to Israel that time. Yeah. I'm in America now. There's no claims that I'm funded by the American government. I went to Poland under the invitation by some of their politicians. There's no claims that I'm funded by the Polish government. When India went into conflict with Pakistan, I come very out quickly and I spoke very positively for India, yeah, and took a side straight away and said, Pakistan's a terrorist state. There's no claims that Indian government was paying me. But when I went to Israel, it's just total, you're a Zionist, you're working for Israel. So they've very cleverly, this accusation is designed to prevent anyone speaking positively in any way about Israel. So, and I don't, if you haven't noticed, I don't really care about what people say because I've gone through a lot of attacks time has proven me right. So I think you've got a beacon of democracy, surrounded by totalitarian, Sharia-driven shitholes, to put it frankly, yeah, with zero human rights, violations against every minority. Do you know the only place minorities got rights in the Middle East is Israel. So when I see all of this furor, I see all this, I just think, and I ask people when they come up to me in the street, I said, ever been there? Ever spoke to anyone there? Ever spoke to any Muslims that live there? And I've done the same this time. So when I saw you this time, I went there to ask questions. John was amazed about. We hear there's this accusation that it's the Jews, and it's just given like Jews, like every Jew. Yeah? It's the Jews that are flooding Europe with migration. That's the accusation. So I think Minister Chickley done an amazing thing. And I think reaching out and showing that, because he had a big fallout, or the government had a fallout with some of the Jewish groups in the UK who are terrible, who are Marxists, who are intent on mass open border immigration, but they showed the separation between Netanyahu and his government and some of these groups, because these groups in the UK who are intent on this, they hate Israel. They don't speak up for Israel. They hate Israel.
Yeah, so there's just to put a fine point on that. There's and lots of people who understand the divide could speak about it, and those who don't understand, they get their back against the wall against this. But if you look at the United States, for example, you have almost 50% of Jews in the United States who don't give a shit at all about Israel or about being Jewish. There's Pew Research polls that come out every year about Jewish life in America and UK. I assume it's pretty much the same. Those are pretty much the same group that are out there that are protesting against Israel, that are wearing T-shirts that say "Not in my name," and the only time they invoke their Judaism at all or do anything Jewish at all is to speak out against Israel or against the Jewish community. And the reason they do that, from my perspective, all they want is to be accepted.
Yeah, that's good.
All they want to do is to be accepted. They're scared. They want to try to assimilate away who they are, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Those guys are disappearing. The groups that are growing are the ones that you see here in South Florida, in New York, and these other places. It's falling apart because here, what you find in this community where you're sitting today is strong, proud, observant, religious, pro-Israel communities. And we don't have those same kind of problems. So that sort of distinction, it's hard sometimes from outside the community, the Jewish community, to see. And people say, look at the numbers. Like, yeah, look at the numbers. You have to understand them.
Look on a map. Israel's this big.
Yeah.
It's like, there's 55 Islamic countries. Why can't the Jews have one? Well, I don't understand. I think all this is about what because they've got a homeland. So you're actually massively against the Jews having a homeland. So if you get, and then when they say it's Israel was flooding Europe. So let me understand this. So Israel are intentionally changing the demographic of European nations to flood them with Muslims, so that Muslims take over the European nations.
So they have more enemies, right?
So then where does that stand with Israel? Then they're wiped out. Because then they're surrounded by the whole world that's Islamic, that's against the Jews. So I just don't get, well, I do get, you have to look at his butt to here. And this is where we've been weak, and I believe Israel's losing the propaganda war. Israel's losing. If Israel is in charge of all the media, they're doing a pretty shit job, yeah? Because I don't see any success from it. And in the sense, I think that Qatar, Iran, they've got into the influencers, they've got them. And they've, like, is it Dan Blizzardjan? Is that what's his name? The Jew said?
Who's that?
The steroid head in America, Dan
Bilzerian.
Yeah, I think we're going to go to head whilst I'm here.
That'd be great.
At some point, because and he's doing a video. Now he's from where's his parents from? They're from, where's the genus?
Armenia?
He's Armenian.
Yeah.
He's Armenian. Your forefathers were genocided because of Islam, and you're sitting there taking a picture like an absolute cuck, reading the Quran. And I just think, what are you doing? You've sold your soul. And I see so many of them, like Sneeko, I see so many of them here who are influential. That's the problem. They're influential, but Americans don't get what it's like growing up in Europe. Come to Germany, come to France, come to Britain, and listen and understand. So yeah, but I get a lot of a hell of a lot of hassle. I said, well, because it would be easy to say silent on this, but I don't say silent on anything, to be honest. I can't.
I think that's actually a plus. And so sort of where I wanted to land with two comments. One, on the influential nature of all these voices. All you have to do is look at the numbers of people under 30 of any political party and the way what their viewpoints are today, and it's insane. No offense to anyone under 30 that's sitting here in the room as we're recording, but it's insane because that's who's influencing those folks, and that's the real thing that we're up against here in Europe and
It's
all
fashionable to hate
over the
Jews.
world.
It's fashionable.
It's fashionable to hate Jews. It's fashionable to hate capitalism. It's fashionable to hate people who are successful. Look at the debate stage in the Democratic Party here, where they go around and say, who's poorer, who has less money, who's been less successful, who's worked less, right? If you're successful, it's somehow something negative. Well, where I want to close is, first of all, just to thank you and to urge sort of the audience. People have lots of different kinds of listeners. People will be excited that you're on the show. People will say, wait, how do you have this guy on the show? Listen to what he has to say. Don't read what writers or AP or whoever else is trying to characterize Tommy Robinson and his work on. Take a look. You can agree on everything. You cannot agree on everything, but someone that's doing a lot of work, shining a light on what's happening. And like I said earlier when we were talking, sunshine is the best disinfectant. So thanks for all the work you do, and you continue to push. Your energy is infectious. And I know this is one episode that people are going to have to put to 0.8 to hear you and to make sure they understand what you say instead of up to 1.5.
I talk too fast, did I? I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. Thank you so much. Thanks for being on.
If you want to follow my journey in America, it's TommyInUSA.com. Tommy in USA. I'm just following my journey. I'm blessed to be here, traveling around the United States. I didn't think this moment would happen.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Thank you, everyone. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe, and do all the great things you do to support podcasts, and we'll see you next time.